Welcome back, everybody. It's me, Alice Blue, and I've got some more Embers Adrift patch notes for you today. So yeah, let's go. Let's get right into it. Alright, so these are patch notes for July 27th. As usual, on Wednesdays, we all meet up and hang out with the devs in Discord. It is a great place. It is a great time to come and ask the devs any questions you have about how the game works, present them your ideas, talk about feedback, talk about anything, really. And also, it's just really fun to hang out with the devs, playing the game with them. It's just a lot of fun. Come and hang out with us Wednesday nights. So what's new? A good chunk of time this week was spent installing and configuring our new server. This includes setting up a new network and adjusting all the things to communicate with one another as expected. The most important thing left to do here is to make adjustments to our server deployment pipeline to accommodate their new location. Until this is done, I will be manually deploying them. Even with this giant distraction, we were still able to sneak in a good amount of content and quality of life upgrades. I also wanted to clear up a few misconceptions about how we as developers view our game. While it may have been true in the past that we touted our game as hardcore or focused on a very old school mentality, we have spent the better part of the last 2 years attempting to shed that stigma. Since our rebranding, the game has gone through significant changes in hopes of making the game more appealing to a wider audience while maintaining what we feel makes our game special. And yes, our special sauce clearly sticks us into that niche category of games, but don't mistake that for us being satisfied with a mediocre product. We want players of all experiences, new and old alike, to enjoy themselves while playing Embers Adrift. Keep your feedback coming. Bug fixes and improvements. Tech. Updated Unity to the latest minor revision. This includes some minor bug and rendering fixes. Implemented draw bag method for spawn controllers and loot tables. This tech is not yet employed, but it will be in the coming weeks. Fixed an issue with dense nodes that were generating duplicate items instead of combining them. Fixed the exposure slider. It now works without having to restart your client. This slider only impacts the minimum exposure of the scene. In other words, it only changes the exposure levels at night. Note, however, that these changes are not instant, and it will take a second to adapt to the scene exposure as you move the slider. Toggling the reflections can cause this to instantly refresh. Nighttime brightness should be consistent. If it is not, then that is an issue that we need to solve. One of the main reasons for statically positioning the planet is to bring brightness and consistency to the nights, so that players can enjoy their time in the evenings. Exposure slider now goes from negative 0.5 to an even brighter night if you so choose. When acquiring ranged ammo via merchant, corpse, or loot roll, it will now go directly to your equipment if you have the same ammo equipped, or an empty slot next to compatible ranged weapon. Interesting. Okay. Increasing the interaction collider size on bats. So the hitbox, okay. Environment and art. Fixed a missing collider in that one dungeon room that got you stuck. I know what room you're talking about. I'm glad you fixed that, thank you. Fixed colliders in dungeon causing nameplates to fade. Fixed fir trees should no longer bend over when you get near them. Oh boy. New dynamic music track added for Dryfoot and Dryfoot Stronghold. Rebaking the nav mesh for New Haven North and Dryfoot Stronghold. Hopefully things aren't all sorts of crazy. Things tend to start acting a bit weird when we mess with the nav mesh. UI. Added vertical ellipsis next to coin displays that you can deposit and withdraw from banks and trade. You can left click on these or right click on the coins to invoke the context menu for deposit and withdraw. Text tooltips on the right side of the screen, mostly notable tooltips for the upper right hand menu, will no longer be offset from the mouse pointer. Replace the question mark on nameplates and no portraits to a more appropriate icon. I'm curious what that is. Added container type icons to the bag and bank UI. Really? Does this mean we're getting a reagent bag so we don't have to constantly organize them? That would be pretty awesome. I guess we'll see where that goes. Overhead nameplates for NPCs. Now consider their scale when determining their height. This should result in better nameplate placement for smaller and larger creature variants, but very well could break some stuff. Let me know if any creatures' nameplates have a really bad height above their head. Design. AoE aggro from heals now only applies to NPCs that have current hostile targets. Moved the Ember Monolith in the Meadowlands to a more central location. I kind of liked the location it was at, but I guess central is better. If I was anywhere else besides near the Ember Monolith, I would just run across the zone, so I wasn't really using it that much. So anyways. You can now select a third profession, crafting or gathering, when both of your previous professions meet or exceed level 12. Really? Really? Okay. I see you. That's pretty awesome, actually. That is pretty fucking awesome. So now I can have my 2 gatherings and my provisioning on one character. I never need to switch characters. I'll never need to switch characters. Well, I mean, I will, because I'll still need to make arrows, but that's pretty amazing, actually. However, we're going to need more bag space to go with that, or at least a separate crafting bag. Imbued prefix for flux crafted items will now vary depending on the level of flux used, lesser, greater, imbued, etc. Refactored how stats from flux crafted gear are calculated. Differences between materials should be easier to identify. Fixed crafted short swords no longer grant two-handed and ranged damage. I didn't even know that was happening. That's kind of funny. Crafted equipment will consistently use the highest level material to determine the level of the output item. But is that gonna fuck with the flux? I don't know. I can't keep up with the crafting, but sounds like a good thing, I think. Added prefixes for dense plants and mushrooms, which are a patch, i.e. a cotton patch, or a penny bun mushroom patch. No visual differentiation. I can't English today, but it doesn't look any different, basically. Looks the same for now. Added prefixes for dense logs, which are pile, i.e. downed outlands cedar log pile. Again, these all look the same for now. Can we just shorten these? Give them chevrons or something? I don't know. Ability windup will only be consumed by ability use. Thank you very much. Slight increase to scale armor class. Refactored humanoid loot tables to reduce the abundance of outer armor items. Fixed boars and dryfoot. They are once again aggressive. New server. The new server has been installed and mostly configured. There are a few automation tasks that need to be rerouted, most of which revolve around server deployment, but so far things are working well. Hopefully this new server will yield improved NPC responsiveness and allow us to run more zones at once. Purchasing with bank funds. This week we are allowing you to purchase from the merchant or repair the blacksmith using funds from your personal stash. At the bottom of these UIs, we have added an available panel which shows how much money you have available to spend and where that money is coming from via the bag and bank icon. This currently applies to all merchants and blacksmiths in the game because all merchants and blacksmiths are near your personal stash. However, In the future, you may encounter an isolated merchant or blacksmith that will only accept money from your bag. Money is drawn from your bag first, followed by your stash. Okay. $46 gold. I want 46 gold. Do you know how fast I could spend that gold on bank slots? A few things to notice in the above screenshots. First is the new available money panel on the merchant and the blacksmith UI. Next is the new container type icon upper left on both your bag and personal stash. These correspond to the icons shown in the available panel of the merchant and blacksmith UI. First, we have the vertical ellipsis to the right of your personal stash's currency panel. And finally, we have the vertical ellipsis to the right of your personal stash's currency panel. This can be left-clicked to bring up the context menu for deposit and withdraw, in addition to the normal right-clicking on the money itself. Bag retrieval mechanic improvements. Sparked by some forum discussions, coupled with the above improvements to merchants and blacksmiths, we are making some improvements to what you can do while you are missing your belongings. We want to open things up a bit, while still having things make sense contextually. The first step in this process is opening up what you can interact with while missing your belongings, mainly the bank, merchants, blacksmiths, and loot. Banks will now allow you to swap out your equipment along with reloading your consumable and reagent pouches. Bank expansions can be purchased if your bank contains the currency required. While missing your belongings, however, you cannot access the withdraw and deposit functionality since you do not have access to the funds in your missing bag. Blacksmiths will now allow you to repair worn equipment using any funds that are in your personal bank, not the shared bank for technical reasons. As you might expect, you cannot repair items in your bag. Merchants will allow you to purchase consumables and ranged ammo. Consumables can only be purchased if there is room in your pouch, an empty slot, or an already present stack. Ranged ammo will go directly to your equipment into an already existing stack or into an empty slot next to the compatible ranged weapon. Looting NPCs can now be done while missing your belongings, but they do come with some restrictions. You do not gain coin from looting while solo or grouped situation because of your missing bag. While solo, you can see all items on the body and even equip items by dragging them directly to the corresponding equipment slot. If the slot is full, you will first have to destroy the current item before equipping a new one. While in a group, you are eligible for loot rolls on consumables, reagents, and ranged ammo. All other goods are automatically passed as they were previously. If you win a loot roll and do not have room for the item in your pouch, the item will be unlocked and remain on the corpse for anyone to loot. The reason we auto pass on gear is to prevent the situation where you win a roll on an item you want. We cannot equip it to you, and so it remains on the corpse, and then someone else takes the loot before you get a chance to. This may change in the future, but right now this seems like the best option to prevent that possible strife. However, if everyone passes and the gear remains on the corpse, you can loot the item and drag it directly to your equipment page. While missing your belongings, you can still not trade with other players or use the refinement station. We hope that opening this up a bit eases the annoyance of bag retrieval, but as always, we look forward to your feedback. Works in progress. To see a full list of what is currently in progress, head on over to this thread. I will do my best to update this list on a weekly basis and highlight the differences from the previous week with bold font. Below, I will highlight some of the upcoming changes in more detail. North New Haven Dungeon, timeline 1 to 2 weeks. We promise that this is coming soon. We got caught up with some crafting fixes, bag improvements, server installs, etc., which delayed us getting this zone ready for consumption. New weapon visuals, timeline 1 to 2 weeks. We have a slew of new weapon visuals nearly ready to go. Right now there are some minor rotational issues that need to be resolved before we can move forward full bore with these. In addition, I am setting up a new prefab templates which will allow me to integrate new weapons into the game faster in the future. Quests, timeline 1 to 2 weeks. The quest system rewrite is nearing an end. We have the current intro quest up and running with the new system, and we are moving on to ironing out the smaller implementation details for different objective types. This tech should be wrapped up by the end of the week, at which point we will shift our focus completely to implementing new quests. You guys, that's big. That is fucking big. Raw component bag, timeline 1 to 2 weeks. To help ease the pain of being an adventurer who also gathers, we are planning to introduce a new gathering only bag. Similar to how your pouch can hold only consumables, this bag would only hold raw components. The moment these components become refined, they can no longer live here. This bag would likely not be lost on death, but would love to hear any feedback regarding this. Dude, another thing, a big deal. That's awesome. Totally awesome. Expanding the action bar. Timeline 1 to 2 weeks. We are likely to expand the action bar from 6 to 8 slots available for abilities. Any thoughts on this? As a matter of fact, I do have thoughts on this. I think that rather than making the bar even longer than it already is, as someone who plays on a small screen, I don't need more shit cluttering up my screen. However, if I had a second bar that I could, hold shift or alt or somehow, tab or whatever, what have you, I could switch to the second bar, that would be amazing. Even if I can only put 2 or 3 things on that bar, that would still be great, because then I could put my utility on a different bar and have my combat actions all on the main one. So that's what I think. I don't want more stuff cluttering up my screen. I want to be able to switch from one or the other. You could even go so far as to have a bar for each weapon, right? So say I have my dual wielding swords equipped, and then I also have my longbow equipped. Each one, when I switch back and forth, could switch my bars entirely. Could have its own thing. Experience re-evaluation. Timeline 1 to 3 weeks. I think my post last week regarding the experience re-evaluation was misinterpreted a bit. As mentioned above, we are not trying to impose a hardcore or old school mentality. What I'm trying to do is make the later levels, ones which you likely have not yet experienced, less painful by offloading some of that grind to the middle levels. In other words, my goal is to redistribute the grind rather than simply increase it. The net result will mean less work is required at later levels compared to the current configuration at the cost of slightly more work for the current mid-levels. That's exactly what I understood it to be, having it be more evenly distributed amongst the levels. My only concern was that if that happened before we got quests, a good chunk of us players are going to be banging our heads against walls as we get into the high level 20s and level 30s, going crazy because the leveling would take longer, right? Because you're distributing it more, so those levels will actually be longer than they already do take, and we didn't have anything to occupy us besides, doing the same thing that we've been doing. So I just didn't want that to come before the quest. So anyways, Ashen visuals and tech. Timeline 2 to 3 weeks. Ashen creatures are going to become crucial to collecting the oh so precious Ember Essence. These require some new tech for spawning, along with allowing players to collect Ember Essence upon their death. After that, we can move on to populating the world with this mechanism for testing. You hear that? At about this time next month, we'll probably be seeing implementation of Ashen variants. Well, that's exciting. Of course, I could be wrong. Could be sooner, could be much longer. I'm just saying, based off of this, it says 2 to 3 weeks, but we'll see. Alright guys, and that concludes our patch notes for this week. I really am curious to hear what you guys think about some of the upcoming features and the new changes. Even if you don't play the game, I want your opinion. So let me know in the comments below what you think about any of these. And as always, thank you so very much for watching. I truly appreciate it.